Thanks again for coming. Hope you look forward to tonight's talk. Tonight's talk will focus on the New Mexico legislature and NAMI's involvement with the New Mexico legislature as it relates to behavioral health issues. You're probably aware, or maybe you're not aware, that this year has been a 60-day legislative session, and I believe the session is wrapping up to a close this week. In fact, I think it ends at noon on this coming Saturday. So we have Patsy Romero is our legislative coordinator at the state level for NAMI New Mexico. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica to give a little intro about Patsy.
Okay, can everybody hear us okay? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So, so in January, Patsy Romero was awarded a Behavioral Health Star Award by New Mexico Behavioral Health Planning Council. She was recognized for over 25 years of public service and advocacy devoted to improving New Mexico's behavioral health and developmental disability systems. She has been the force at NAMI by leading the organization in identifying legislative priorities and educating the state board on legislative issues. She works closely with the New Mexico legislature to assist legislators in crafting bills, being an expert witness in hearings, and following bills through committee hearings to the floor to completion. In many instances, her testimony in support of behavioral health legislation has been critical to its passage. And she is also, I should add, the CEO of Santa Maria El Mirador, which is a nonprofit which serves adults with intellectual disabilities.
Great. All right. With that, we'll turn it over to you, Patsy. Patsy, thank you so much for all the hard work you've been doing at the legislature and for NAMI and for, of course, the cause that's near and dear to all of our heart, which is behavioral health issues. So take it away, Patsy.
Well, thank you. If I look a little tired and worn, we are. We've had quite a busy legislative session. If I could share my screen, Jessica, let me see if I can make this work here, and I'll pull up my PowerPoint.
Yes, and it should give you permission to share your screen.
Okay, and let me see how I do this. Hold on, I'm not very good at this, so let me try to get this. Share screen. Okay. And
Patsy, I forgot to ask you, if we have questions, would you like them held until you're done with your presentation, or would you like people to put them in the chat and Jessica can relay them to you along the way? Or
if you want, yeah, if you want to put them in the chat, please do so. I just want to say I'm just really honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me. It's been such an important issue for, to work on legislation because it impacts our lives every day. So thank you. Let me just try to figure this out, Jessica. So
sounds good. You should have share screen authority down at the bottom.
Okay. Well, I do share.
Yep, looks like you're getting there.
Okay, and then let me pull up my PowerPoint here. Hold on a second. Let me grab it here. I tell you what, some of these things drive me nuts.
You and me both, Patsy.
Just you'll give me a minute, I'll get there. I have so many screens opened up. Okay, let me get the desktop and my.
And as Patsy indicated, audience members, if you do have a question and you want to put it in the chat, we will try to get to it along the way. And certainly we'll get to it at the end of Patsy's presentation.
Yes, feel free. So let me get, can you see this PowerPoint okay? Let me do I think there's a way to do it with the slideshow.
Yes.
Yeah, from the beginning. Oh, it looks good.
Right. Looks really good.
Really good. Excellent.
I thought this picture kind of would tell a story to all of you about what we do at the legislative process. And it's not just at the state level, it's at the national level, it's at the local level. I've got to tell you, sometimes we have to multitask when we're doing this work because it's a lot going on. So I thought I'd put a picture of somebody multitasking because I can assure you that all of the committee advocates do exactly what this picture shows. We're multitasking at all of the time. The Legislative Advocacy Committee, so you know, for the state includes Betty Shover, Gabby, and I know I did not spell Gabby's last name correctly, but Gabby's the executive director for NAMI New Mexico. She's been incredible this legislative session. Myself, we have included Troy Campbell on a few things, not very active. And my apology, I forgot to type in Cheryl's last name.
Atine. Atine.
Betty, repeat it for me.
Atine. A-T-I-N-E. I think.
Yes, and she's participated somewhat in the advocacy activities. But one of our biggest supporters has been Roadrunner Capital. It is it's a program that we invested in for the legislative session, and we would be lost without it. What they do for us is they inform us every morning of the legislation that we're tracking. They keep us appraised of when the committees are meeting. And so it's made it so much easier for all of us to stay on top of legislation that we're tracking. And in just a little while, as I get through the slides, you'll understand why this has been so important. And so we utilize their website and their monitoring program in order to stay on top of all the bills that we're tracking. And of course, more than anything, the New Mexico Legislative Web Access site has been extremely helpful to all of us. We're all busy. We all have other lives. We've got 100 other things that we need to do. Some of us are not in town. And so, it's been very helpful that we can participate through the web access at the New Mexico Legislature. I did forget to mention that Sherry, our state president, I think she's our state president, has also been active in helping us with some of the legislation that we've been tracking. And please feel free to ask questions as we go along. The New Mexico legislative goals for this past year has been, number one, to advocate at the county, state, and national levels for non-discriminatory access to quality health care, to housing, to education, employment for all people with mental illnesses. I think it's important to know that our other goal is to educate the public about mental illness. And of course, NAMI is at the forefront of doing that. We work to eliminate the stigma of mental illness. And of course, we advocate for increased funding, always asking for money because we can't do this without the funding for research into the causes and treatment of mental illnesses. The NAMI New Mexico 2023 legislative priorities included these 4 categories: expanding access to services, responding to crisis, support community inclusion and non-discrimination, support funding priorities at the state and local level. The reason I brought that, I thought it was important to let you know what these legislative priorities have been for 2023 is because as we go through the pieces of legislation, it'll help you understand why we're tracking those particular pieces of legislation and monitoring closely what the state is going to do, because they will impact individuals with mental illness. So just to quickly, expanding services, access to services, as you know, expansion and monitoring. We do a lot of that, of mental health parity laws, limit plans that don't cover mental health and substance use care. We try to support enhancement of all behavioral health services and systems, how to grow the workforce. I put in that one of the bills that we've really supported. How do we improve the current workforce that we have? So of course, funding for the behavioral health professionals is extremely important. Employment opportunities for certified peer specialists. I know peer specialist is a big issue here in New Mexico. We've really supported it, supported that approach to improving direct care. So we certainly have looked for that. And we also looked at strengthening guardianship laws because, as you know, the guardians are critical. Treatment guardians are critical to many of our severely mentally ill. We respond to crisis. So what we looked at in that particular category or in that particular priority was the expansion of crisis intervention and stabilization services, which included the 988 crisis response. We are still monitoring that closely while the Human Services Division and Behavioral Health Services Division has money to continue 988 crisis response. We have a huge gap in the follow-up once people call the crisis line. So that's still something we need to work on in New Mexico. Strengthen suicide prevention services. As you know, we're number 3 in the country for suicides. I think we're almost near the top, and that's a huge issue for us in looking to as one of our priorities. Diversion policy from justice involvement. You know, we've been working for years to try to improve upon that, and that's part of what we look for in the legislation that is brought forward so that we can see if there's anything in there that's going to improve that particular issue for us. Our other legislative priority was to support community inclusion and non-discrimination. So we look for, are there expansions of permanent supportive housing? We all know that that's a huge issue for us, for our mentally ill. And so we've really monitored that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legislation that was brought forward this session regarding supportive housing. Expansion of services for children and youth. We know in NAMI that we need to pay close attention to what's going on with children because in a very short period of time, they will be in the adult system. And we're going to have to continue to care and improve services to meet their needs. We oppose impeding, limiting, denying, or any type of access to care. We absolutely oppose something that might in any way present a barrier to care. We denounce racism for negative psychological, social, educational, and economic effects. And we eliminate the mental health disparities that are perpetuated by racism and racial discrimination. So those are some things we look for in all of the bills that are presented. The other final legislative priority that we have in New Mexico is to support funding priorities at the state and local level. We want to promote education, employment, wellness, and other public funding priorities. I don't know why my computer is clicking. So here's a brief summary of 23 of the 2023 legislation to date. So far, we've had 119 pieces of legislation that are related directly to behavioral health. We have 69 pieces of legislation that are related to substance abuse. Now, there's a few that, go hand in hand, but this is what we're seeing. We have 125 pieces of legislation this session that were related to housing, either some kind of a housing bill, and it doesn't matter if there's some kind of housing policy in New Mexico. It sometimes has an impact on the people that we're advocating for. We had 129 pieces of legislation so far that are related to workforce issues in New Mexico. Huge issue for all of us in New Mexico because we're looking for behavioral health professionals and paraprofessionals to help us meet the need for care. And the advocacy committee has tracked a number of pieces of legislation, and I'm going to walk you through all of them. And you'll understand why I put in that picture of us pulling our hair out every once in a while. It was a lot. So the state budget this year so far increased the HSD budget was increased by the Senate 2.9 million. Okay, that's how much they increased the budget that was presented. What was contained in that 2.9 million are the following. So the state equalization guarantee, which has to do more with education, reduced the category, the number in that particular category by 88.5 million. Now, this was the Senate who reduced the budget, but they added $5 million for behavioral health supports. So that was a win for us. And they added $5 million for special education initiatives in the schools. That also was good. Some of the $88.5 million that was in there, the Senate felt that money was already there. They'd had money in there before, and it all hadn't been used. So that's why they reduced it by 88.5 million. In the DD Council, they increased money for the DD Council, the Developmental Disability Council, 177,000 for a special education ombudsman. And so, I thought that was a good thing. And they awarded 434,000 plus for the Office of Guardianship. They also gave 150,000 for the Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And this was a good one that I thought they put into House Bill 2 is they're prohibiting the use of state funds to establish a single MCO to provide Medicaid services to children in state custody, and that was removed. So they were trying to remove that opportunity for them to use state funds, and they basically put it back in. And that was a good thing. I thought that what the Senate did with the budget was positive. They've got a big budget, so I don't think there was anything in there that was of concern to us, except the housing component, and we'll talk about that shortly.
Patsy, excuse me, could you explain for the viewers what is meant by MCO, please?
Oh, a managed care organization. So somebody like Presbyterian, somebody like Optum Health, that's what an MCO is, managed care organization.
And that provision prevented it from going to one MCO? Is that what it said? I'm not looking at it now, but.
Yeah, let me go back. I think I can go back. How do I go back? Previous. Oh, okay. So here's what it means. And right now we have 4 MCOs that manage all of the funding. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to prohibit the use of state funds to establish a single MCO, right? That provides Medicaid services to children. And they said, no, we're not going to do that because then you only have one MCO. And then you minimize the choice for people to use the MCO of their choice. Does that make sense? I hope
it's sort of like they wanted to prevent one MCO from being a monopoly on the whole thing.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
They did away with that when we had Value Options and Optum Health, and now we deal with 4 MCOs, and is it good or bad? Things are it's still up in the air, but at least you have choice, and I think that's important, especially when you're dealing with children. So I think that was a good approach. So I'm going to take you through all the pieces of legislation that Betty, myself, Gabby, Sherry, that we have been tracking throughout this legislative session. Now, I'm going to just give you the bills and where they are right now. I can tell you Nothing has passed yet and made it to the governor's desk except two bills, and we'll talk about those shortly. They're not in this first slide. So we were tracking House Bill 29 as amended, and it's for integrated substance use disorder program. Currently, it sits in Senate Finance Committee, and it's really a program to add additional support for those programs. House Bill 38 was a rural healthcare practitioner additions. I'm hoping that that will make it through. I'm not sure that it will. It's House Bill 388, and currently it's in health judiciary. And I typed that one incorrect. House Bill 41 was an ask from the Developmental Disabilities Council asking for additional funding that wasn't included in House Bill 2. It did not make it. It was an appropriations request. As many of these, you're going to see that many of these are appropriation requests, to improve on some of the services or increase the services. If the money was not included in House Bill 2, it didn't make it through this session. So we're going to have to try to figure out a way to try to get it into the next budget cycle in the next upcoming session.
So House Bill 2, Patsy, just for clarity, is the big giant appropriations bill that takes in the entire state government funding. And some of these bills that were separate bills, their funding requests got lumped into the House Bill 2, right? Is that kind of how it worked?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great description, by the way. Thank you. And we do have to pay attention to House Bill 2 because the House creates House Bill 2. They go through the budget, they create it. The budget then goes to the Senate, and they allow the Senate X amount of dollars that they can play around with once that budget has been established. And as I stated before, they gave the Senate $11.2 million in additional funding to play with, I guess is a better way of putting it. But, you saw the result. So 11.2 million is not a lot of money to work with. So the Senate was not too happy. There's a lot of politics going on, as you can imagine, currently. And so there's some concerns there, but we won't go into it. It's politics, but that's part of what's going on. We were tracking the Tribal Health Council's funding. I think that's going to be fine. It was in House Bill 2. That one's going to go through. So we're happy about that. The bill, basically, when I talk about the money being in House Bill 2, the bill itself, HB 49, basically goes away because the request and the ask for the service is in House Bill 2. House Bill 51 was a prescription drug affordability board. That one I think will finally make it to the governor's desk. It's really to set up a board to really analyze what these prescription drug companies are charging. I think that's always beneficial to us. It's currently in House Appropriations and Finance. House Bill 60 enhanced the sentencing for fentanyl use. I believe that one will make it to the governor's desk. They're really pushing that one. That's currently in House Commerce Committee. The biomarker testing insurance requirement, that's House Bill 73. That's in Senate Finance. So once it's gone to the Senate, when you get a House bill that's already in a Senate committee, that means there's a good chance, there's good probability that it'll make it to the governor's desk. Even though we're 1 week away, they're really pushing it. And that's really when you see things moving pretty quickly. So I believe House Bill 73 is going to make it to the governor's desk. House Bill 92 is a residential treatment service funding that was requested for a Solteria house down in Doña Ana County. it did not make it. They were asking for 895,000 to bring up a 6-bed home. They thought they could provide services to about 30 people. The money itself was not in House Bill 2, so it didn't make it. I think we need to monitor that one closely in the interim. I'll talk about that later on in the presentation. House Bill 104, Behavioral and Mental Health Clinic Supervision. That's in House Appropriations and Finance. I think it's going to be fine. I think that one will probably make it. It's basically asking that we, provide additional support to those individuals who have to supervise potential clinicians. House Bill 112, Public School Wellness Pilot Program. Again, these are up. That one's also on its way to another committee. I'm doubtful that one will make it to the Senate because it hasn't gone to the Senate yet. So these are all still trying to get into the Senate committees and to the floor. House Bill 200 was the Fort Stanton Veterans PTSD program. Again, these are all, they may go, they may not. It just depends on the committee chairs. We'll watch it to see if it makes it through, but it is a program we would like to see get off the ground because our veterans really need as many services as they can get. You can see that, if I talk about all of these, I can assure you it's going to take me all night. But what I thought I would do is let you see these and let you know what we're doing. I'll just go very quickly through them and you'll know how much work we've been doing throughout the session and what may or may not get through the entire session. So all of the ones I'm talking about right now and in the next slide, there's a strong probability that they're not going to make it through the entire session. I'll talk about the ones that have passed. So the health insurance, mental health coverage, it's identical to Senate Bill 273. That one has a good probability that it'll go through. The housing and behavioral health services, House Bills 358, did not make it. There wasn't enough, it was an appropriation, did not make it. We're going to have to try to work on that one in the interim. Mental health crisis triage centers, House Bill 373. I'm happy to say that one has passed. It is a mirror bill to the Senate bill that Senator Ortiz-Pino carried. I'll talk about it here in just a few minutes. You can see that it's House Bill 373. The other one, they're mirror bills. It passed in the Senate. It's already going to the governor's office. So we're going to be able to get that through. And I think that's important. And I'm really pleased about that. Housing and behavioral health services. Again, that's not going to make it this session. There isn't enough money for that, and it's not going to make it in House Bill 2. Want to talk just quickly about that. What everyone is trying to do, what the behavioral health providers are trying to do, and the sponsors that are sponsoring these pieces of legislation, is they're trying to bring back, this transitional housing. They were treatment services, they were housing services where as severely mentally ill adults could live for 18 months in a house, regain some of their life skills so that they could live independently. Years ago, the MCOs and the state stopped paying for transitional living services. And so they had to do away with them. So people are trying, and the providers are trying to bring those back into the system. We are we're very supportive of that, because if we do not, we're really jeopardizing, I think, quality care for the severely mentally ill, specifically when they come out of an inpatient facility homeless. They have nothing to do. These transitional living services are just critical to their health. These transitional living services in the past, and I ran one, we were able to get our individuals employed. We were able to get them integrated into the community. And that is so important in what we're trying to do. And we really have to push to get these back on the table. And we've got to get them back as an approved service by Medicaid and through the general fund and through the MCOs. We really have to work on that. The mental health triage centers, I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly, but interrupt me along the way. Those have passed. That is on its way to the governor's office, and I'm extremely happy about that. We need these triage centers in the state. Study use of these are the psychedelic medications, the mushrooms for mental health, and some proponents believe that can help an individual coming out of a psychotic break, I guess, if you would. I hate using that word, but so really it's just to study the use of the psilocybin. I don't ever pronounce it right.
Psilocybin.
Yeah, say it again.
Psilocybin. Yeah. Back in the day, we called them magic mushrooms, but that's a whole other story.
Called them, right? And the magic mushrooms. I think it's worth studying. I don't know, if that's good or bad or whatever.
Yeah.
Certainly worth anything we can do to study what might work. And I think that one will be okay. That one's probably going to make it.
That looks like it'll make it, Patsy?
I think it'll make it through.
Yeah, this bill is actually near and dear to my heart, just to add a little personal perspective on it. There's a lot of research being done, for those who aren't aware, on the potential for various different psychedelics to treat both mental illness and addictions. In fact, the FDA is funding quite a bit of it right now, whereas 3 years ago, it was illegal to do research on psychedelics. And the one that's legal in New Mexico isn't psilocybin, which is why this bill is here. It's a medication called ketamine that many people have found helpful for depression and things like that, including yours truly, me, who's found some benefit to ketamine. So I'm really glad to see that is moving forward and has a chance of passing to be studied and looked into in this state.
We needed you to be an expert witness on this.
I could have been there.
I'm totally in agreement with you. I think it is a good bill, and I am confident that one is going to make it through.
Good, excellent.
Yeah.
And NAMI is supporting a lot of this research too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very promising. Still a lot of things to look into with it, but it is very promising.
And so, as I'm listing these tracked pieces of legislation, we have been in support of every one of them, just so you know. House Bill 420 reduces adverse childhood experiences. Not sure how that's going to go yet. It depends on the chair. So I'm not sure about that one, but we'll continue to follow it. The interjurisdictional compact, I think that one's fine. I think that one's going to make it. It's not very controversial. It certainly helps to increase access to care. First responders PTSD, it's in the House Judiciary Committee. I think that one might have a chance. It depends on what happened today. They're working through the evening, so I'll follow it. But as of this afternoon, I wasn't too sure about that. House Memorial 5 is going to make it. I love this bill. It's just a memorial. Senator Ortiz-Aquino is supporting it and sponsoring it. It really requires that we study the developmental disability and mental health issues together, forming a task force, because I'll tell you, individuals with a developmental disability also have a severe mental health diagnosis, and vice versa. So we've got to try to not separate those two, but trying to bring them together. I'm hoping I'll be able to serve on that task force. But, who knows? Like I really have enough to do. Senate Bill 7, Rural Health Care Delivery Fund. That one is on the floor. I think that one is an appropriation, not sure if it's going to make it. And I'm still not sure. I'm looking into it right now, but I don't know if it made it in House Bill 2, and it could have. There was 800 pages. I looked at some different pages of House Bill 2. So I'm not sure, but we'll continue to follow if it comes up. Senate Bill 49, again, you can see that it's also a mirror to House Bill 420. So we'll monitor it. It probably will, we'll see if it gets through. I'm pretty confident it will. The interstate.
Patsy, are you able to describe exactly what that Senate Bill 49 does as far as reduce adverse childhood experiences? And for those who aren't aware, adverse childhood experiences are sort of the new term for childhood trauma. So Patsy, if you could sort of let us know what that's all about.
Well, so you've got several sponsors because they're trying to. Let me read it to you so that I want to make sure that I'm explaining it, correctly, and maybe Gabby is on because I think we and I have both followed that one. I knew you were going to ask me a hard question that I couldn't. And I can usually answer.
It's okay if you can't access it. It's fine. We can move on. It's not.
I'll send you the.
Okay. I'm just personally curious. Okay. Thank you.
I know. No, I'm sorry.
It's
ready.
Okay. There's only like 68 bills that you're tracking or something.
Well, no, there's a lot more you're going to see in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Senate Bill 103 is the Veteran Police and First Responders. That's in Senate Finance Committee. I believe that one will go through as well. It's about providing more training and support for first responders to deal with, the veterans and police. So they're trying to train folks so that they react appropriately, just like we've done with CIT training. It's basically the same approach. Senate Bill 11 was temporary suspension of licensing fees. There were a lot of bills where people are trying to reduce the expense for people to come into the state, to come and provide services. Some of these licensing fees are, quite extensive. So there's some push on that. Not sure if that one's going to make it, but it's out there. The prescribing psychologist bill, Senate Bill 117, that one has traction. And it's also one of the governor's bills. So I'm going to follow that. And they're basically trying to move it's a broader definition for prescribing psychologist. For those of us out in the field, we depend on prescribing psychologists to prescribe more psychotropic medications because you can't get enough psychiatrists to do it. And they've done, I think the experience we've had in New Mexico with their professionalism, I think it's time to broaden their ability to do that. So again, that's one of the governor's bills. So I think it will get traction in the next week or so. We will have a final report that'll tell you what's going on. So here's another continuation. You can see all of the bills that we're still looking at. The Financial Exploitation Act, Senate Bill 119, is one of my personal bills that I'm supporting. It really gives the Adult Protective Services Division and the judicial system to really try to prevent the exploitation of people with disabilities, the elderly, the mentally ill, because there are so many cases where family members or case managers, advocates, they take advantage of the financial exploitation of these individuals, and this time they'll go to jail for doing it, because a lot of times these people end up broke. And so we've been supporting that one. Child sex abuse statute of limitations, that one's getting through. It is now in Senate Judiciary. That one is one of the governor's bills. It eliminates the statute of limitation for sexual abuse of children. So anyone, if you're 69, 80 years old or whatever, and you've had something happen to you, you will no longer have to wait and think that there's a statute of limitations. You can go after the perpetrator. Senate Bill 128, Child Protective Custody Procedures. That's been cleaned up. The bill has. I'm not sure if it's going to make it all the way through, but a lot of these children's bills, they're really pushing to get them through because they are some of the governor's requests. We've been tracking services for the homeless people. Senator Nancy Rodriguez has really she's got several bills here for the homeless. These are all in Senate Finance. They're small appropriations, but we really need to deal with the homeless situation. It's also one of the governor's preferred pieces of legislation. I'm very confident these will make it through. So it's services for homeless people. There's an appropriation for that. Santa Fe Homeless Shelter and Programming, increasing programming opportunities for the homeless. And then
Patsy, that 141, the Santa Fe Homeless Shelter, isn't that specifically for St. Elizabeth's?
it is. It is. But you know, they never put the name of the provider, but yeah, it is for St. Elizabeth.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and we really need to support those. Oh, sorry. Then the Community College Peer Counseling Program, that's in Senate Finance as well. You know, Senator Ortiz-Pino is pushing this so they can have more certification for peer counselors. It's a good one, doesn't have a lot of money in it. I think that one's going to be just fine. And then, of course, Senator Ortiz-Pino wants Senate Bill 149, tuition waivers for anybody who goes into the behavioral health tract to be able to waive some of their tuition costs. And don't know, it's in Senate Finance right now. We'll monitor that and see if it's going to go ahead and get through to the House. The behavioral health transition housing, it's in Senate Finance. Again, here we go again with the transitional housing. I'm just not confident those are going to go through. They were appropriation type bills and they didn't make it in Senate bill, in House Bill 2. The substance abuse demand plan, this is Senate Bill 190. I feel a little bit lost on this one because we assigned it to Troy Campbell to follow. And Betty, do you know what happened with that one? I know it's in Senate Finance right now. I did track it this morning, but I don't know that Troy ended up advocating for it. And I thought I saw Gabby on, so I don't know if she knows.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay, so I hope that I can have a better report for all of you on all of these later. Senate Bill 256, it's a disciplinary action for conversion therapy. Some of you may be familiar with conversion therapy. It's in the Senate Judiciary Committee. What I heard today is, you know, we're not sure if that's going to even make it through the entire session, but we'll see. And we'll double, you know, we'll look back on it and see what's going on with that one. Senate Bill 262, it's supervision of behavioral health professionals. It's an appropriation, but there's money in House Bill 2. So the sponsor was confident that that one is going to get covered. Senate Bill 273, the health insurance mental health coverage. This one is going to get through to the governor's desk because it's already in the House. And it looks like that the mental health coverage is going to go through. What we're experiencing is that there were a lot of MCOs who were being a little, you know, weren't following parity, and we want to make sure that the mental health is covered and that there is no denial of mental health services. So we're very pleased that this one is going to make it to the governor's desk. The crisis triage centers, as I told you before, that is already on its way to the governor's desk. It passed, it's done. Thank you, Senator Ortiz-Pino. School-based health centers, that one has passed. What they're trying to do is codify school-based health centers in the schools. Gabby and I participated in some of those committee hearings. We need school-based health centers in all of our schools. So what is happening in New Mexico is you have school-based health centers in some schools, but not all. This bill requires that the state of New Mexico ensures that they contract with federally qualified healthcare clinics to ensure that we've got school-based health centers in the schools, and now our kids have a place to go. And if they don't, particularly in rural communities, they never get care. And you know as well as I do that our adolescents will be coming to our system very quickly. And so we really rely on school-based health centers for behavioral health services. The county detention facility treatment, I was really happy about that one. It passed, it's on its way to the governor's office. And that's making sure that those that are in jails, that they're getting treatment for behavioral health services. It's absolutely necessary and critical. And so I'm glad that that one passed. It's on its way to the governor's desk, and I know she's going to pass it. So behavioral health provider shortage, it's in Senate Finance, trying to spend money to recruit behavioral health professionals. And so we're hoping that that one will make it through the session, but we don't know. The Children's Bill of Rights, that one's of course passed. It was a Senate joint memorial, and it just really talked about Children's Bill of Rights for care. And that was something that we looked at and supported. These are some of the highlights. Some of the highlights in the session this year has been the Paid Family Leave Act. If you want to know what the legislators have been concentrating on as you looked at all of those bills that we're tracking, and where is everything? Why isn't everything being looked at? I mean, they spent hours on the Paid Family Leave Act. I was very thrilled by last night that it was tabled. And the reason is because every employee was going to have to pay a 0.5% tax. It's a tax, either way you look at it, just like Medicare. Some of you, we all get taxed on Medicare. And the employer was going to have to pay a 0.4% tax on everybody that they employ based on their salary to workforce development, to create a fund where people could go in and apply for paid family medical leave.
Patsy,
Yeah.
just to jump in here, we've got about 5 more minutes for your presentation so we can allow a little bit of time for questions. Thanks.
Oh, okay, sorry. CYFD monitoring was another huge thing. We've had a lot of problems with CYFD. They wanted to spend a lot of time on that. Gun control, as you know, that's a biggie. School-based healthcare, of course, we just talked about those. And then increasing salaries for direct care workers. And so they've set up a cost study to determine how much we should be paying. Additional monitoring, we looked at Senate Bill 399, which was limiting solitary confinement. And Senate Bill 379, that was the Curry County Behavioral Health Facility. The sponsor pulled it. He's going to look for a capital outlay to pay for that facility. I hope he gets it because they do need it down in Curry County. Next steps for us as NAMI, just quickly, we need all of you working with the interim committees because that's where most of these bills get heard. I hope that you work with us. Every single one of you is welcome. We need to do that. We need to prepare to be expert witnesses at interim committees to pass some of this legislation. So here we go. And we want you to get more involved in legislative priorities. That's it for my presentation. Sorry if I bored you with all these bills, but that's what we've been working on. So thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Patsy.
thank you, Patsy.
Yeah, you didn't bore us at all. It's just, having been a lobbyist over there for 10 sessions many moons ago, it's overwhelming what goes on over there and how much work. We're down to 3.5 days left in the session, and it's the equivalent of about 2 weeks worth of legislative time, that the work they'll be doing in the next 3.5 days. I did want to address one question that was, if you could bring it up higher there, that was presented in the chat by Alyssa. And Alyssa apparently is a former state representative from the state of Oregon. And she asked about the alcohol tax bills, the one that was going to have a 25-cent tax on that. And I'll just say real quickly that those bills in their form, they were going to fund mostly the Alcohol Harms Alleviation Fund, which would have really been good about alcoholism. But of course, we all know the liquor lobby is pretty darn powerful in this state and other states. And I think the compromise was for it to be a 1 or 2 cent tax on alcoholic beverages rather than the 25 cents. So that's the answer.
Can I jump in there? Because I've actually been working on that.
Of course.
Nice to meet you all. And the compromise was actually 15 cents on most of them, although they did cut out the little microbreweries. And I think that may have been the 1 cent, but the hard liquors are all 15 cents. And the money is going to go, I don't think it's just the alcohol harm reduction. I think it's to behavioral health treatment. So it's going to raise a lot of money. I think it's 100 million or it was going to raise 180 million originally, and it's about over 100 million. And then there's Ortiz Pino has another bill that's taking the behavioral health money, that half of it went to general fund. And I think that's part of the same deal, that all of that will also go to behavioral health treatment.
Great. Could you introduce yourself so we know who just shared that?
Sorry, I came in late because I just came back from the Capitol. I'm Alyssa Kenny Geyer, and I was in the Oregon legislature from 2011 to 2021, and then moved here in midway through 2021. I've been here a year and a half.
Wow.
And I was chair of Human Services and Housing, and then served on the healthcare committee the whole time I was there. So behavioral health and working with NAMI was a huge part of what I did during my career there. So I'm really happy to be here learning about what you guys are doing in the legislature.
Yeah, thank you for all of your work, and thank you for that update. I think it's amazing how quickly things change at the legislature. The last I read in the newspaper, it was some little token amount of 1 or 2 cents or whatever, and you're saying it's 15 cents. So that's pretty darn good.
Well, we'll see, because it's going back and forth from Senate and House, and so we'll see what ends up.
It ain't over until it's over. That's
right.
Yeah, thank you, Alyssa.
Well, we'll get Alyssa. We would absolutely like to recruit you to help us with legislative work in the interim and the next session.
I'm particularly passionate about the intersection of housing and behavioral health, and so I've worked a lot on permanent supportive housing. So,
Great.
Hope to get to know you all. And I had a note in the chat also for you, I don't know your name, Nami Santa Fe, about Oregon's passing the psilocybin for medical treatment. First state to do so. So I'm very excited about that.
I understand. That is really neat. Anybody else have any questions?
I want to just ask Alyssa, if you'll put your email address and and you would like information from NAMI Santa Fe, we can get you on our email distribution list, and you can
I would love that. Thank you.
We'll track you down, Alyssa, and bring you into our activist fold here. So
the March for NAMI was always right around my birthday on May 20th in Portland, and I used to go in that all the time. So I'll be eager to start.
It'll be May 20th again.
Oh, it's the same all over the country?
And and it's going to be here in Santa Fe as well.
Okay. I didn't realize it was the same all over the country.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? We don't have any more here from our end, and that was a really wonderful presentation, Patsy.
Thank you, Patsy.
Really appreciate you taking the time to put it together in a logical way on a PowerPoint. We know you're extremely busy right now with the legislature, And with that, we will once again say thank you to our participants, our viewers,